Mexico with 20.
Gainesville, The Villages, 1370 AM, 96.3 FM, The Source.
All right, nice looking day. It's Wednesday, Robin. You made it to the middle of the week.
I know, it's great.
A few clouds out there. I like that one of the few clouds, right? Mm-hmm. What do you do, like, if you're an artist and there's no clouds? You got to put them in there, right?
Yeah.
You got to pretend. All right, 25 minutes before 10 o'clock, we have an author in the studio, and we're going to talk about her books and publishing as well. So we got both sides of the story here today. This is interesting. C.B. Hoffman has been with us before. Her book is called Consuming Fire. If you're looking at the video, there it is in the picture. C.B. is a University of Florida alumni, a Gator.
Go Gators.
Good to see you again. Let's see. You were a strong advocate for faith in God. You retired after 29 years of teaching English and psychology in Florida. Where did you teach? At the university?
No, I taught in high schools in Central Florida.
Oh, okay.
But she is available for guest lecturing there if anybody.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you were going to say as a psychiatrist, because you never know.
No.
I might need somebody. Dan Hoffman is here.
Yes.
Dan is an art director, a photographer. Are you responsible for the cover?
Yes.
Oh, nice.
And I'm going to try to let CB talk a little today.
Good job.
That'll be something.
We also have John.
And John Hoffman is here.
Yeah, he's our production assistant and also my dad.
Good morning.
Yeah, I call him John or Dad, but yeah, he gets stuff done.
So young. Oh, wow. Everybody looks so young. Am I getting old, Robin? Everybody looks young.
I think so, yeah.
So good morning to all of you. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you for having us.
John, I think if I remember, I think last time you were just a photographer, right?
Yes.
So today you're talking.
I get to wear a coat today.
Well, thank you all for coming. Where do you live? Where's home?
Pleasure. Orlando.
We live in Orlando.
Okay.
But I came from West Palm Beach
Yeah?
originally.
I was actually born at Shantz.
Oh, were you?
Yeah, I went to my first Gator game at 2 months old, and my parents told me that I was actually born the same month as Travis McGriff, and
Yeah.
apparently they
A
were
week
really
and a
excited
half apart.
because Lee McGriff was in their Lamaze class.
Lamaze class, yeah.
But so that's pretty cool.
That is
So,
cool.
yeah.
That is cool. Are you all writers? Do you share that talent? No?
Honestly, I've been seeing it develop in Dan. He started out as my content editor, trying to make sure I didn't say anything that sounded too dated.
I remember you telling me this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And as we've gone on, he writes his own blogs for New York. See you later.
Oh,
He just returned from a year's tour of the world.
Yeah.
and-
So basically, I started out as being bossy, and then she was listening to what I had to say. So then I just got more and more bossy. So that's
And it
how I'm
made,
her
but
editor.
in the end,
Right.
the product is the better for it, right?
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
so.
he's-
I think so.
Yeah, he's developing into quite a writer. Yeah, I don't have to edit half as much as I did originally with his blogs.
So just talking about the things that may have made it seem dated. For example, typewriter instead of what, computer?
I didn't say anything about a typewriter. I wasn't that far off. But I had been an advertising layout artist back in the day, and I had to take pictures and develop them myself in a dark room.
In
So
a
I was
dark
talking
room.
I was talking about a dark room,
Air
and
quotes.
he went off the deep end and said, "There are no dark rooms. Everything is digital."
Well, and then she would say things like, "Went outside and hailed a taxi." Nobody's
Yeah,
hailing
I
taxis
talked
anymore,
about
you know?
taxis, and he says, "No,
Yeah, it
it
just
has
needed-
to be a
yeah.
ride."
A ride share.
But that's
Fair.
only if it's set in today's day,
It
right?
is. It
Right. So he updated. See, I started writing that book like 30 years ago, and it took me a long time because I was only writing during breaks, summer breaks from
Sure.
teaching.
Yeah.
And I was working on a master's degree in there. So, I mean, I barely got any
You were
writing.
a master what?
Master's degree.
Master's degree. Okay.
In the meantime, and so but I had taxi and I had dark room, and he had.
But the story doesn't take place then; it takes place now.
Right.
Well, it
Now it does.
definitely
Now it's
sounds
now.
more like now with Dan's help.
So
yeah.
in 20 years, everything will change again. And
I
We'll just update it. It's an
know.
ebook, So
I
just
know.
push out an update.
Yeah.
We'll be flying around in cars and taking monorails up and down Florida, and yeah.
So are we here today to talk about the book or about publishing books? Or what would you like to
Well,
focus on?
We're a do-it-yourself publishing team.
Well, and it's how to turn your dreams into do-it-yourself projects.
Yeah.
So basically how to take that passion, a hobby project, and then make it a lot of work.
Okay.
Yeah, make it a lot of work.
Yeah.
What are the advantages of doing it yourself as opposed to letting Simon & Schuster run with it?
Well, when I used to send out my manuscript to these different publishers, they always said, you don't need an editor. It's written very well. It's just not what we're looking for right now.
For marketing. And we found that that is because less than 1% of first-time authors ever get a publisher. It's like, trying to make a break in music. You know what I mean? You have to have 5 albums out before you get like a deal and before people find out about you. But anyway, it was very well written. Go ahead, sorry.
So, no, that's all right. So the point is, you get to say what you want to say without anybody saying, you can't say that.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And you get to use your own ideas and your own style of writing, because a lot of times editors, and when I was an editor, I tried not to do that, but they have a tendency to change what you've written to the point that it sounds more like they wrote it instead of you. They somehow edit out your voice, and I think.
Well, that's not good.
I think your voice.
That could happen. That's
Yeah.
not necessarily always happen.
This is maybe a business question for people who write books and want to know. But I mean, does an editor? I'm guessing they vary. Are some editors mostly interested in grammatical issues, as opposed to story content and continuity, that kind of thing?
Oh, they cover it all.
There's
what would you prefer?
Yeah.
I mean, what would you? I mean, you do editing yourself.
Well, Dan turned into my content editor by updating everything.
That's kind of like a big picture kind
Yeah,
of thing. You know what I
yeah.
mean? Like, where's this all going? And once we decided that it wasn't just going to be one book, we needed it to be a trilogy, which was actually my idea.
That was his idea.
Yeah, no, but so it's just once we decided that and trying to come up with a big picture, like where's this going? What are the major plot points? What are the big scenes? What are the big action scenes? And that's kind of my role. And CB writes the beginning of the book is really like a girl goes into a church to get payoff cash from under one of the pews. And I would not have been able to write, she was accustomed to coming here. She was an assassin embroiled in a sultry web of blackmail and deceit. I would have put girl enters church. You know what I mean? So what I like to do is I like to...
And which is better? Which way?
Well, I guess mine's more like the screenplay.
Depends on your taste.
Yeah. But so I like to come up with like the big picture and try to, kind of dream and then like have CB write it and then I'll tell her what I think.
A very, very interesting thing. Did we answer your question?
I was asking about the editor. I was just curious which is preferable. The editor who works on, like, for example, let me give you an example. Let's say the editor says, I like this story, but I don't understand how the character ended up in Vermont. Let's say there's a gap in the writing, not necessarily in the style or in the the grammatical stuff.
Oh, I've got something to tell you about that. He not only decided this was going to be a trilogy, but all 3 of those books are now on audible.com because he...
Oh, really?
He decided...
That is cool.
He decided I was
I love Audible.
going to record them, so that was a new skill set to learn, too.
So you read your own books?
I read my own books.
I love that, too.
Yeah, well, we looked into it. I'm going to cut you off, sorry. So we looked into it. It's like $3,000 for an audiobook producer. You'd actually be great at this with your voice. It's
really?
like butter. You should. It's like $3,000 for about 6 hours of finished audio. And so I was like, okay, this is now a trilogy. I'm not a math major, but that sounds like at least $9,000.
A lot of money, yeah.
Yeah, and we've actually have 6 books now, and I'm like, okay, this is gonna, we're gonna price ourselves out of business here. But so anyway,
you did it yourself.
Yeah, we got like a little boom arm. We got the mic. We got the little the 1-channel, actually 2-channel little mixer and the headphone amp.
You built a soundboard
we got a bed out of the room.
Show you a picture.
Put a sofa in there.
Yeah.
It's now a studio.
So how long did it take to read the whole book?
That is interesting, too. It took me about a month to do the first book, but that was not acceptable. I had to go back and redo it, and I do all the editing myself and everything.
Okay.
And by the time it met Dan's expectations, it was more like 6 months.
At least. I made her redo
Yeah.
the first sentence and the first paragraph at least 100 times.
And then the interesting thing I was going to tell you is when I had to go back and redo the book, as I was saying, the first book. And as I was doing that, I started noticing gaps in the storyline and how one thing didn't seem to flow from something else.
Oh, really?
Because, this is one
So
of...
now you're not just a writer, you're a reader, and you're noticing some things. Okay.
And that's the main thing I used to teach my students. Listen, you've got to read what you've written because you know what you're talking about in your head, but you've got to write it like you're the reader, and they've got to know what you're talking about. You've got to fill in the gaps. And so when I realized I had left gaps, I thought, duh, didn't you used to teach? Not to,
Well,
yeah.
And being a family member and a son and now an editor, it's kind of interesting because the first couple of, we've been through several revisions of the first book, but, you're always trying to feel out, like, am I going to hurt her feelings? Can I really tell her?
That's hard,
Yeah,
right?
it is hard.
Yeah,
And, she's your mom.
But if you weren't related, you would
Yeah.
just go for it.
Now
maybe.
he does.
Yeah, I think so. But
Now he goes for it.
But isn't that best? I mean, isn't that
Yes,
doesn't that
it
make
has
the
to
book
be.
better in the end? Yeah.
It has to be.
Yeah, because I know now that we could be like completely honest with each other, and
Yeah.
even after we had finished what I thought was the final revision, there were still a few things in there, like a taxi, and just a few little things that I'm just like, oh man, I'd really like to change that. And she had already recorded the first audiobook.
What city does it take place in, the story?
All over, like New York,
Well,
Paris.
So there's plenty
Texas.
of taxis in New York. I don't understand the whole taxi.
Yeah, but
thing.
most
nobody's
of
using
it,
them anymore. Everyone's using rideshare.
most
trust
of
me.
it happens
Taxis are
around.
the
Nobody's
worst.
using taxis.
Only tourists use taxis. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, CB wants to say something.
Most of it happens around Dallas, Texas.
Ah.
Okay.
Yeah,
It's all over the
yeah.
And
place.
what's the taxi scene like down there?
I have no
Ride shares.
idea. But according to Dan,
Yeah, trust me.
it's ride shares.
Yeah.
But anyway, when I started filling out these gaps while I was recording the book for the second time, and I'm finding these gaps, and I said, Dan, we've got to redo this book. And I added characters and events.
So this,
and
what you have here, is different than the one you brought last
this
time?
is the
No, that one's
Finished.
probably the same one.
Yeah.
But it's been revised a
Finished
lot.
one.
Like the first ebook was available for sale in like 2011, and like the first iPad came out in 2010. So like I was still up in New York and like walking around, and we had decided that we were going to try to self-publish, and we were looking into all that and the details and like how to get the books printed and then distribution and stuff. And I remember seeing an ad for, I think, Christmas maybe 2008, 2009, and that was right. I was finishing graphic design school, and I was like, okay, cool. There's this new thing. It's called a Kindle. It's like $400. It's like the size of a book, and you can read books on it. And I remember thinking, okay, cool. It's a little expensive. And then, like, I think the very next year, Apple came out with the iPad, and I was like, oh man, I want one. You know, and just like everybody else, and then like, oh, you can read books on that too. And I was like, cool. How do we get the book inside the iPad? So, and then I guess I'm off topic, but maybe not. But anyway, so then
It's a different format.
yeah,
And
well,
you have to
exactly.
know that
Yeah.
when you're.
Well, and
So,
when you're
but
publishing a
NYU
book.
had a class called ebooks, and so like I got CB's credit card, I enrolled in the class, and it was more like it was more for like hopefully I really hope she's paying all the bills someday. But anyway, so I'm in this class, and it was more for like people in the publishing industry to kind of learn how to transition into promoting and like doing ebooks. It wasn't like a technical formatting class, but I learned that the file is called an EPUB, and then I learned that you can lay that out using a desktop layout program. I was like, I'm a graphic designer, so I started looking into that and started like took all the classes I could find, read everything I could find, and came out with the first one. So it was on in 2011. Oh, I'm getting back to our original point. So then you know it was still needed a little bit of tweaking. I think we tweaked it once or twice, but then the audiobook was done, and then we realized, man, we really need like one more good revision. And then so this is I think we're calling it the 4th edition. So
yeah,
and that's
but
currently the one.
I
that's
had-
there.
what sells better, the ebook or the actual book?
It's the same.
I
Oh,
don't.
is it?
Yeah.
I don't agree
Yeah.
with that. I think the print,
it's the same
print book.
content.
It's the same content, but I think people today still like to have
It's all
a
about
book
the
in
ebooks.
print.
Don't listen to her. Listen, the ebook is only 99 cents, and you can download it. It's less than you spent on coffee. The print book is Amazon Print on Demand. It's $8.
Yeah,
so you
that's
could
true.
buy all 6 books for the less than one price of the one.
Nice. How do you market it? How do you get the word out about it? Besides doing a radio show.
That's the hard part. Go ahead. I'll let you handle this one, CB.
No, well, he's got a degree from UCF in marketing. I think that question goes to you.
Well, I mean, so basically it's all just trial and error. We've tried a lot of things like
Tried PR.
Yeah, hired a lot of different companies and kind
Yeah.
of like mixed results with that. And ultimately, we're just finding that you just have to do it all yourself. That's what we're finding for everything. And so, it started out as like a little hobby, like, oh, cool, let's, I'm going to design a book cover for my mom's book, and who knows, what'll happen with it. And, and then like I really like it, and I'm going to help her with it and all this. But now it's like, we have like a full blown do everything yourself. Like our to-do list is about 5 pages long.
Yeah, thanks to him.
Yeah.
It's
So
he's
that's
the motivator.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's a little frustrating. But so, I mean, it's ultimately like media outreach, and you're learning all the social media. I'm trying to get CB to learn this program, Hootsuite, where you can schedule all your social media posts and do all this stuff.
What is that called?
Hootsuite.
Hootsuite.
Yeah, yeah. And so you're supposed to be able to, I've never used it, but it sounds amazing. Yeah. But
You also have delved into film production.
yeah.
Oh,
So
yeah.
How is that?
Well, I got a camera when I was in school to help me execute my ads and graphic design concepts, and so I started learning about photography. And being in New York was great. I used to go up to the rooftop at night with the tripod and take long exposure shots, and kind of learned about shutter and composition. And did a couple of walking tours of New York with some photographers and learned a lot of stuff. And so just kind of was really learning about photography. And so videography goes along a lot with that. Once you kind of get the shutter and the aperture and all that, and you get like a decent camera, like the new mirrorless ones that can shoot 4K and all.
Excuse me, I got to interject.
Yeah.
Now he can do underwater scenes with sharks in Indonesia.
That's really off
and
topic.
set music to it. And I mean, his New York See You Later blog is just it's
CB's our biggest fan.
well, it's really surprising. See, you learn what your kids are,
I love
are
blogs.
capable
I
of.
love podcasts. I love
Yeah.
So that's actually where like
And he
podcast
uses
is
a
on
drone.
Yeah, the podcast is on the list too. We just like, okay, what are things that people do? Okay, let's figure out how to do it, and then
Yeah.
eventually you have it.
Well, actually, that goes back to the fact that I had given up the book. I had given it up. I had put it away. I didn't want anything more to do with it because I felt God had given me the book. And when my first publisher had bad health news and had to let me go from the contract, I got so discouraged. I said, you know what? I'm not going to let this book make me mad toward God and ruin my relationship with him. So I let it go. I said, forget it.
So-
it's not worth it.
Let me put myself in the shoes of the listener right now.
Okay.
Because many of them are authors, and so a lot of the talk you just did about putting a book together and the ebook and the audiobook, that's all interesting to them. But then there's a whole group that just wants to know about the book, like the story in the book. And I want you to talk about that, but I also want you, as you're telling it, tell me the additional things to the storyline, like things like your personal beliefs. Are they in the book? Things that
It is a faith-based book, and the main themes in all my books are repentance and forgiveness and reconciliation. The main character, ALEXA SILVEN, has a major conflict with her dad. A lot of girls grow up with conflicts with their dads, and hopefully not everyone. But she has this conflict, and in the end, she is able to reconcile
Yeah.
and Yeah.
And there's no sex or drugs or cussing, which is great. And I don't know how like writing a love scene with your mom would have worked out anyway. So I'm thankful for the fact that that's not.
Who's the girl on the cover? I think you told me that once.
That's actually one of my friends from New York. So I'd been coming up with some really, really awful cover designs since the first year I was a graphic designer, and I would show it to CB, and she's like, "I love it," and then I'd like, a few years later come up with a different one, and she's like, "I love it," And so anyway, so I had finished design school in New York, and I was like, I still didn't have a cover design that I liked, and it's really hard when yourself is or your mom is the client, because how do you know when something's good enough? How do you know when it's done and it's good enough, and you got to just move on? And so I was like, okay, so what would I do if this was an actual paying client? And I'm like, okay, I'd come up with a concept. I'd come up with a vision, and so I had this vision. The lead character is a redhead, and so she's a fashion designer, so she's fashionable, and she's getting blackmailed into being an assassin. So I have this vision of this girl looking over her shoulder and wearing a red dress with a gun hidden down by her side. And actually, the gun's not on there anymore. Amazon really doesn't want to let you advertise if there's a gun on the cover.
Is that right?
Yeah, it's a problem.
What, they wrote you a letter and said stop? Or change the cover?
They don't accept it.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, they do.
And they tell you why.
So that's why a lot of these like action, books don't have guns. It's like just someone running or something.
Right?
Yeah.
Wow.
But maybe like a Target or something,
Yeah.
but they don't want overtly. But on the website, there's plenty of guns. But anyway, so then I was just thinking, okay, so that's what I want. How would I do that? And I was like, okay, I'd hire a photographer, do like the whole bit. And then I was like, well, okay, so our budget's about a couple $100. And so, I was just reaching out to some friends, and I knew that this was a friend of a friend and from church. And so I ran the idea by her. She was a model actress, and she's like, yeah, sure. And then so I started looking up, how do you get a gun in New York City? And
don't.
Yeah, I probably was flagged by some law enforcement website. They're probably following me. But anyway, so you can't, exactly, you literally have to have like a movie production company with $1 million of liability insurance, and you have to have a police officer on set, and so I was like,
really?
Yeah, I was like, there's no way we can afford that. And then you have to rent the gun from a prop house, right? So I'm just like, oh goodness.
Oh,
so
wow.
anyway, so what I did was so we got her, we bought the dress, and then we filmed it like in the courtyard where she was living in New York, and or we shot it, and then so I actually had her hold an umbrella, and then I photoshopped out the umbrella, and I made a gun in Photoshop.
Okay.
Yeah, from scratch in Photoshop, and then put it in her hand. So there never was a gun, but so anyway, so that's how we did it. Just beg, borrowing, and stealing from friends, and
so tell me about the trilogy part of this. Are the other 2 books written already?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, we've got 6 books online.
6.
Well,
okay.
This is part of a trilogy of 3, and then there's like some other stuff that
Okay. Is this the first one?
The first one.
And the best. The trilogy's the best. The other
Well, the
books are
first
good,
one
but-
is the hardest one to write. I can tell you now that I'm developing as a writer, and not just an English teacher, but the first one is the hardest one to write, because you have to establish your characters and their personalities.
Do you like your characters?
Let me tell you, I like my characters.
Do you have any you don't like? But you have to have them in there?
Probably Daniel Gothner. She names them all after family members.
No, not Daniel. The villains. Angelo is a real jerk. Yeah, he is. He's terrible. He's the one blackmailing
But you
her.
need a really good bad guy,
Do you know somebody that you base them on?
Don't mention.
Not the bad guys, okay, but my 2 main male lead characters are named after my sons, Daniel and Mark.
Okay.
And what's interesting with that, as he became, the reason why the book got resurrected when I quit was because he called and said, read it to me. Whatever happened to your book?
Well, I called in, and we were just chatting, and I had said, so what's going on with your book? Because she had actually lined up a publisher, and then the lady got some crushing news.
Yeah, we mentioned that.
I did. Yeah.
Okay, so.
Yeah. Okay. So anyway,
the deal is
I called her
here.
and I said, what's going on with
Yeah.
it? And she said, it's done. And I was like, well, what do you mean? And she's like, well, it's done. And I was like, so you got a new publisher? No, I'm just, I'm kind of over it. Yeah, I kind of quit. And then I was like, well, let me hear it. And because it was just a project she was working on, like in summers, and I had known what the title was and the subject matter, but she kept changing it all the time, and I wasn't up to date, and it was always too busy. And so I said, well, just grab it and read it. And she's like, what do you mean? And I was like, well, just what's the first sentence? She's just like, oh, I don't want to. And I was like, just go get it and just read a little.
Well, he convinced me,
Yeah.
and then as I was reading it to him, and he started making suggestions, and before we knew it, he had become my content editor. But what I'm trying to say
Oh, yeah.
is that the interesting thing that happened along the line is he started identifying with his character.
Oh, my.
And when he started identifying with his character, he started saying, "No, I wouldn't say it that way." Instead of saying that character
That's too
wouldn't
funny.
say, it was, "No, I wouldn't say it that way."
Yeah, it's a great cast.
And I wouldn't
Stan.
do that. And so
So
it was interesting that he developed, he
That's
identified with his
I want to make sure we
character.
give the listeners the information so they can buy the book. But Dan, real quickly,
Yeah.
we've had more than one guest that started out as a blog, ended up with a book.
Oh.
Is your blog going to be a book?
Yeah, we do. We want to write some travel tips and tricks, and
Could be, huh?
yeah, we take all these goofy photos with the subway handle. And you know what? I was just going to see what you guys are doing tomorrow. I could have my wife and I come back, and we could talk to you about our travel blog. I'm just kidding about tomorrow, but anyway,
I don't know.
We'll talk off
All right,
air.
before we
Yeah.
run out of time, how do we get the book? How do we find out more about your work?
I'll take it, CB. So the website is CB Hoffman. So that's C as in cat, B as in boy, and then Hoffman, just like Dustin Hoffman, but with two N's. So it's HOFFMANN. So just go to the website and pull it up, and then as you're scrolling down, you'll see that there's little things like you can listen to an audio sample. If you click on purchase, it pulls up like a little pop-up where you can buy the book from Amazon, iTunes, and Barnes & Noble. And then if the books are available as audiobook, there's a link to audible.com. And the first book is available in print. We just have to turn the other ones into print books too. But so you could buy it there, but we don't take any of your information. And all of the ebooks are only 99 cents. So we don't want someone to be like, $10, so
Yeah,
we
right,
just really
right,
want people to read it and hopefully, it's fairly clean, although it's suspenseful and dramatic and
Lots of
dark,
suspense, yeah.
and places. And
Well, good luck
yeah.
to everything you
Thank
all
you.
are doing. CB, good to see you again. Dan,
to see you
John, thank you,
guys.
Thanks for
thank you
coming.
all for coming
Yeah.
in here. And we will put this up as a podcast ourselves, a video podcast. We'll take a little break. We'll be right back. This is The Source, WOCA Ocala.
Broadcasting from the Paddock Mall Studios, this is WOCA, Ocala, Gainesville, The Villages, 1370 AM, 96.3 FM, The Source.
Here is your 1-minute news brief. 3 toll road projects that would greatly change traveling routes in Florida are close to being approved by the Florida Senate. Environmental groups have expressed concern about the impact of the new roadways. Among the plans is the extension of the Suncoast Parkway from the Tampa Bay area north to the Georgia state line, likely to cross through Marion County. Former Florida gubernatorial candidate Andrew Gillum faces an administrative hearing today over allegations that he improperly accepted gifts from lobbyists. Legislation that would restore voting rights to convicted felons who complete their sentences, except for murderers and felony sex offenders, moved another step toward passage in the Florida House yesterday. Tampa voters elected a former police chief and openly gay woman to be their mayor. 59-year-old Jane Castor will now run that city. And MegaCon Orlando is launching its own bus service this year, providing transportation between Tampa and Orlando. And that is your news brief from The Source.
Lots of sunshine on this Wednesday, a pleasant day, but a warm one too with a high of 82 at the coast, 88 inland. And for Wednesday night, clear to partly cloudy, low 59 in the coolest inland spots, about 65 along the coast. Thursday, sunshine mixing with clouds and very warm, high 84 along the coast, 89 inland. For Friday, more clouds and sun with a couple of showers and a thunderstorm with a high in the low to mid 80s. From the Florida Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Joe Lundberg.
Visit Southeastern Trailers today. We have new and used enclosed cargo and open utility trailers, along with built-to-order trailers. We service all brands of cargo and utility trailers, installation of hitches, wiring and electric brake controls, and installation of trailer accessories, with locations in Ocala and Ormond Beach to serve all of Central Florida. Call 1-888-622-1816. Again, that's 1-888-622-1816.
Hi, Matt Wilkerson here, your Verizon representative with news that will hum your car, make it smart and safe. How? With the new Hum device by Verizon. You can rest assured you're never alone. Flat tire?